Hello and welcome to our Infinite Summer 2023 event. I'm really excited. We're doing another developer interview here. We have Matt Black Studios, Eric, the lead developer on Lucid here to talk about this amazing looking game today. We actually featured Lucid last year as one of the very first trailers when we launched our Game Infinite Friends indie trailer project. And here now in Infinite Summer 2023, we get to have them back to talk about the game. Eric, love for you to introduce yourself.
Hello, hi Jesse. Yes, my name is Eric. I'm the creator of Lucid, and it's like a love letter to all the games I played growing up with a little bit of modern sensibility. Yeah, really excited about it.
Awesome, Eric. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day to talk with us. I know a lot of us are excited to learn more about Lucid. I myself, it was one of the first games we featured when we had I had this idea of like let's turn Game Infinite's YouTube, at least part of it, into a indie game trailer mecca place for indie game trailers to be that people can come and find trailers about indie games that you won't see on the IGN or GameSpot. So like you can see more indie game trailers here.
Hmm.
And you were one of like I think you were like our third or fourth one we ever did. So it's just
Yeah.
really cool to have you guys back and actually do a full on interview here for Infinite Summer 23. So it's great to have you. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks for having me, dude. It's wild. It's pretty crazy how long it's been.
I know we have a lot to talk about. We have some really cool stuff. You guys have a Kickstarter coming up. You mentioned something about a demo in our pre conversation. We're going to be having gameplay here in the background for this video. So very excited to learn more about Lucid. Let's start. Let's just start talking. Dive right in.
Let's do it.
First question. What type of game is Lucid? Yeah, the people watching this, you'll all be able to see a little bit of gameplay behind us, but tell us in your own words, like what type of game is it? Like what were some things that went into its inspiration? Why did you make this type of game? Tell us more.
Okay. Wow. So, Lucid, I've been affectionately calling Lucid the world's first Celesteoidvania. Um, but essentially, it boils down to like if you were to if Lucid had like a recipe list, it would be like world building and lore of Super Metroid and Legend of Zelda and Hollow Knight, with like platforming from like a dash of a Celeste, Mega Man X/Zero, and then like some combat and arena combat, like Doom and Hades. So yeah, if you like mash those all together and stir them up real well, you can get Lucid. But as you can see, I guess over here somewhere, it's a side-scrolling platformer, and I love me some pixel art. So it's kind of like I don't know, like HD Super Nintendo, I guess, maybe like 32-bit era. But yeah, it's I guess the Celesteoid portion or the Celeste portion of the Celesteoid Mania is that you'll notice you can keep chaining if you hit these nodes. Basically, if you can keep hitting targets, you refresh your jumps and your um, crystal art resources, so you can extend your combos by connecting with hits, and thus it expands like the world. So that's like the gatekeeping of the Metroid portion of it, where the more abilities you have, the more you can explore. So that's like the nuts and bolts.
That's awesome. I love some of the references in there, especially the Hades reference. That was
Mm,
one of my favorite games that
dude.
came out in the year that it came out. And so any game that kind of looks at what that game did now, I can see some of like from what I've seen of the game in the trailer and some of the gameplay clips I've seen, I can definitely get some I can see some of that inspiration, some of the colors and the vibe and just some of the I can see the inspiration there.
Awesome.
Hades was one of those games where it took it was one of the biggest indie games of the year. It took the industry by storm, and I basically got like peer pressured into playing the game
Yeah.
because every outlet everywhere had it on its list, and I'm like, man, I gotta play this game, otherwise I'm gonna
Yep.
feel left out. It was such FOMO of
Yep.
like of like I have to play this. I actually held up my list, my end of year stuff to play that. And I was like, yeah, yeah, it was good as everyone said. So
It
any
was
game
totally worth
that,
it.
yeah, totally. So I can definitely see the vibes there. And Celeste is another one that's is in good company as well. So it definitely it's in good company if it's taking inspiration from some of these other fantastic games. And I really do like the art style. I have a question on the art styles. It's
Yeah.
very purple forward. So what's up with purple? Is it your favorite color? Does it have
So,
some special meaning? Tell me why purple?
so I hate to it's not a fun answer. It's No, there's no super importance to purple. I mean, I guess in the sense that like the main color motifs are kind of like the cyan and fuchsia magenta, yeah, magenta. And I suppose if you blend those, you kind of get a purple. But it just so happened to be the first kind of in a biome I was working on, and it just happened to be really purple. It makes everybody pop, and that's where all my footage is kind of coming from because I want to make the super instead of like making a bunch of biomes and just I don't know, like they're not ready. I'm like making one area super duper tight, super solid foundation before moving on. You know, like a solid foundation, taller towers, that whole thing. But yeah, purple. I think it's just really pretty, and I think it makes things pop. I think it goes well with the mood. I like that. I don't know. It's got like a mysteriousness to it, but it's still kind of like royal and I don't know. It's I just think it's a nice color. But yeah, sorry, no. Aside from just like a mixture, which I guess maybe if I wanted to, I could like figure out some lore bits. But as of now, nothing too crazy.
That's fair. That's fair. Exactly how long has Lucid been in active? You're a solo developer, correct?
For yeah, like basically, I've been a solo developer for oh man, for I started well to answer your question. I believe when did I start or when did Lucid begin?
Mhm.
Um, it all began in way back in 2012-ish
Oh
area.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, man. And this was like it
You
well,
realize we've flipped those last two numbers around and added two
I
now.
know. It's been a while. It's been a whole while, dude. So like,
It's crazy to think how long ago 2012 was. Like it's
dude,
sometimes I'm just like, oh, this is a couple years. No, no, it's not no
yeah,
more.
that's how I feel about like the 90s. And you're like, oh yeah, the 90s was like, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago. I'm like, no, dude, no. But but yeah, so for I'm not sure, I don't think we've talked about this, but I studied to be an architect, or I was an architect for like 10 plus years. And during a late night studio session in school, it was like 3 in the morning. And, I don't know if for people who aren't aware or know much about the architecture schooling, it's kind of pretty grueling, late hours, no social life, yada, yada, yada. So it was really late and I was like burned, I was just burned out. And I was like a frequenter of Destructoid. And I remember seeing this like this article, and it was like a demo for this game called Iconoclast. Ooh, and I looked into it. I played it. I'm like, this is awesome. And I looked into it more, and I'm like, it's only one person. You can make a game. One person can make a what? So I reached out to him and I said, hey man, love your work. This that and the other thing. And he pointed me in the direction of Construct and Game Maker. And it just became this little hobby of mine for forever. And but Lucid started out, as we said, like way back 2012 up till 2016. It was in Game Maker and it was a way more traditional Metroidvania. But then I went on kind of hiatus because work picked up, life picked up, and it just was a thing. Fast forward a few years, around 2020, walking the dog with my fiance, and she's like, "Whatever happened to Lucid? That was like, it made you so happy." I was absolutely miserable at my job. It was soul crushing, and I'm so glad I'm out of that business. But I was
Aren't all
very,
jobs?
dude, it was the architecture industry and me were just oil and water. I don't want to be um, poop talking the industry, but my goodness, I did not like it. So I'm miserable. We're on a walk, and she's like, "You should start at least start doing what you love. You were so happy. Sounds good." I rebuilt the whole thing in Unity. I've been thinking about using Unity, so I rebuilt it from the ground up in Unity. And this is when it went from kind of a traditional Metroidvania to this is around the time I started playing Celeste. It might have been like a few months after I redid it, but this is when Celeste came in, Hades came in, Doom I had played at this time, and all this kind of influenced the next iteration of Lucid, and it's way closer to what you see today. So, started in 2012, but it really kind of started in 2020, I guess, this Lucid. So it's kind of a muddy answer, but
It went through like a soft reboot when you kind of
yeah,
picked it back up and started to reevaluate things because
yep,
you weren't the same person way back in 2012, 1,000 years ago. And
yes, yes, yes.
it's actually kind of crazy how I feel like we have a similar ish journey in that Game
Oh,
Infinite actually. So I came up with the idea for this platform, this gaming platform, when I initially thought I wanted to go into game design.
oh,
When I realized that I'm not a coder, I would never be a developer. It's not what I wanted to do, but I love
right.
video games. So I I really wanted to get into like the business side of it, and I love like gaming news, gaming journalism, gaming
Yeah.
marketing, that type of that side of the industry, and I like that way more. And I was working alongside all these other developers, people who had industry experience, and I knew it. One of my professors was a developer whose game had been in development for 10 years, and I'm like, I'm this big game nerd, and I love video games, and I live in the same city as this developer working on a game
Uh-huh.
that this is not this. He wasn't a nobody. He had like AAA experience, and I had never heard of his game. And I'm sitting there going, that right there proved to me that there was a need, that indie
Oh.
devs don't have a lot of great resources to get their games. Because I was like, he spends all of his time making the game,
Hmm.
and what little time he has a day job, and he has his 100% of his free time goes to making this game, and the game's been
Yep.
developed for 10 years.
Yep.
There's no time left over to tell people about it,
Dude, the
and
marketing portion of this is
it's brutal.
it's brutal.
And that's where I was like, well, I can't make games, but I can sure as heck. I mean, I've been in sales my whole life, and I'm like, I can sure as heck tell people about games, and
Hmm.
that's where Game Infinite was born, out of the idea of like being. I've always used the joke tagline of the IGN for the little guy. Um, that's what we were just like. We'll be the gaming platform, and that was
Lowercase IGN.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what birthed the initial idea, and that was actually also in like around 2012 when I came up with the
Wild.
initial idea. It went through several iterations. It's evolved into a lot more than that. We support all types of content creators now.
Mhm.
A big chunk of it's still indie. That's our core foundation. We've branched out to cosplay and fan art
Mhm.
and streamers and stuff like that. And it's gone up and down. I've had people come and go, and it's been a however long it's been since 2012. What is that?
A
12 years.
10,
Oh
yeah, a
my
little.
gosh. Oh, so many years ago. And last year we reinvigorated our indie program, which is why we met you guys, and we were
That
like,
was me.
so we started like supporting indie games en masse, because I we tried it a few years prior, and it
Uh-huh.
just didn't go anywhere. Indie devs didn't have the time, and we just had to reorganize the program, and our new model is way better, and we now have like dozens and dozens of indie games that we've supported over the past year. So I've been really happy with it. It's how we found you guys, but it's really cool to see some of the parallels of like we both started around the same time, kind of let things drift away a little bit, and then came back, and Game Infinite did a soft reboot
Yep.
a couple years ago as well.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So
It's
it's
like,
just cool to see similar journeys.
yeah, man.
Not
I
Rome
love it.
was not built in a day, so
Yeah, exactly. It's like a process, and
yeah,
what is it like? Failure is only failure if you stop. It's just like a stepping stone to success and all that.
yeah.
But
Because
yeah,
like
that's awesome.
sometimes that question, I have that question on my list, is like, how long has the game been made? Um, and that question doesn't do justice to people's journeys, because I think, but I like the question because because sometimes that answer is like, oh, the game's been in development for a year and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I like it when it's more like that, because it reveals to people that some of these games are lifelong passion projects that people
Yes,
built in their spare time with a day job. Or
bro.
the things like, people don't know how long these games take to make,
Yes, dude.
and that sometimes translates into their perceptions of like, how do we treat indie developers, how do we give feedback on games. Like, there needs to be this understanding that not all indie development is equal, and that game you're playing it
Yeah.
could be someone's life's work.
Yeah, it's a
And
single person's life work doing it by themselves, and it's like, why didn't you just change X, Y, Z? And you're like, the amount of manpower it would
yeah,
take to at this stage in development to like change that fundamental thing. It's like
yeah,
they have no understanding of how much one person doesn't have like the muscle as a AAA.
yeah.
But yeah, no, to
People
your point, I was in my lunch hour, I would peruse, and don't tell my ex-bosses about this, but when I should have been working, I was going through forums on learning how to code, how to do pixel art, watching tutorials. At my lunch break, I would go to the deli or the Starbucks and just like sketch lore. I have my notebook. Where is it? Right there is my notebook. Here. Yeah, this notebook right here is my Lucid notebook from 2012, and it's like got all my enemy sketches and stuff. It's just the amount of hours and love. It's like a complete. It's my life's. It feels like a life's work already, but yeah, it's I live and breathe making Lucid. So I appreciate you trying to get that sentiment across. It's helpful.
That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do these developer interviews, want to shed more light on it, is because And I was actually talking with the previous group of developers in our other interview about we touched on this subject briefly about how like I want to help the gaming community start to realize that we can have a different relationship with indie developers. These are people you can talk to, and we can
Yes.
help build games together. We talked a little bit
Yes.
about how the benefits of early access
Yep.
can help with development, things like that. Because we need to the gaming community, we need to do a little better job partitioning how we work with indie devs a little bit differently with our relationship with big corporate AAA. And I think this
Nice.
reason is that this conversation is important is because right now big corporate AAA is being very abusive towards players and
Dude.
has a very toxic relationship. And we're seeing this insane upward trend of games releasing in absolutely unacceptable
Disarray.
anti-consumer states.
Yep.
And I use the most recent example of the release of Jedi Survivor on PC is absolutely unacceptable. This is a $70 title that is
Mm-hmm.
literally one of the worst gaming experiences of my entire gaming career. And that's like I remember Anthem, I remember Fallout 76, I remember some of these
Yeah.
games, and somehow a sequel to our previous Game of the Year winner
Uh-huh.
is
Uh-huh.
now one of the worst games I've ever played. And we're seeing more of that. And the corporate response is unapathetic, just kind of dismissive. Like they
Yeah.
want to see what they can get away with. And because that relationship's growing more toxic, I want to kind of remind gamers that give the criticism to the big billion-dollar corporations that deserve it. But these small indie devs that are working on games in their free time, we got to do that differently.
Yeah. It,
So
it's pure passion and like I I was pretty comfy in my job. I was doing pretty well, but now I'm like back into college where like, I'm watching the amount of, I eat and how much soap I use because like I have a savings, but I want to do this and like to put all of it on the line for something you love so much and then to like post something, they'll be like, the colors are weird. And you're like, I'm sorry you feel that way.
good old Twitter, right, or
Yeah.
Reddit, or
Yeah, yeah.
Steam reviews. There have been
Yeah.
times where I've seen comments and I'm just like, oh, people, be nice
I know.
people.
I know. It's like
Um,
please just a little more empathy would be go a mile. But to your other point about there's a flip side of that where like the community around that's been developing around Lucid has been
mhm.
nothing but oh man, I've made some really good friendships, and they're friends that are like willing to help out, and they give their time and effort without even me really asking, and super supportive and good feedback, and just like even just across all different art mediums like animation, music, like in the Lucid Discord, it's just like a really good community that I couldn't be more grateful for, and they're the polar opposite of that. So, you know, I don't want to
That's
be.
always great to hear. I mean,
Yeah.
that's we can talk about the bottom 10% of the internet
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes,
yeah.
but then what is really cool is just to see. Honestly, it's one of the coolest things that I've enjoyed in the last years when we kind of rebooted our indie program was just how supportive the indie community can be.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, it's such an avid pool of really talented people, really supportive people, and it's just really cool to see. And I really like meeting all of these cool new people that are really talented working on games. So like this is how I get to peek behind the curtain of how games are made. Like I'm a huge gamer and I love video games.
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Hmm.
getting to talk to people who are making them is one of the coolest parts of this platform that I get to do. And I think this is just a really cool way so more people could see that more humanization of game
Oh
development.
yeah, agreed. Yeah,
So
this
that's what I love
platform
about it.
is this your platform is awesome, man, because it's like I don't know, the adult version of like going to recess and hanging out with your buddies and being like, no, if you go to this section, you can just talk about what you love and like I'm a firm believer that video game design is one of the most biggest epitomes of like every art form. It's like music,
Mhm.
coding, art, storytelling, cinematic. It's just everything. Everything is put in there, and there's so many facets to get into, and like I could talk about it forever.
Absolutely. A video game is peak technological storytelling.
Hmm.
I mean, it doesn't have to be that. I mean, it can. There's the
Oh yeah,
popcorn flicks of the game world as
yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah,
but it can also still be like peak storytelling. Like this is the
totally,
ultimate tool for telling narratives. And
totally.
people who don't play video games don't get that. They don't
I know.
understand what they're missing out. Like some of the greatest gaming experiences, both AAA and indie, are indescribable to people. Like I tell people like in the indie world, I've been like, you just need to experience Journey once in
Oh
your
my
life.
God. Yep,
Like that game makes you feel like you're ascending to heaven. Like I
yep,
don't know how else that like
yep.
it doesn't it's like hard to describe.
It's funny
But
you say
that's
Journey because my fiance, who's not an avid, she's not an avid gamer by any sense of the word, but she's played Journey, and I think I'm pretty, if I'm remembering correctly, that was the one where she was like, it kind of like clicked, like, oh, it's not just beep boop lasers and arcades. It's like, oh, there's like more to this. And then it was I think Last Guardian she played next, and that was she loves animals, so Trico and her were like, "Oh, Trico." So yeah, man, like they can reach out and touch you if you're open to it.
oh yeah, yeah, I saw this really hot take, just bad take of like someone was complaining about how they didn't like indie games, and I'm just like, first off, I'm like, what's wrong with you? You're missing out on great experiences. But it was like,
I think I
but
saw what you're talking about.
I think it was
Yeah,
on Twitter.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
remember if
yeah.
it was I don't remember if it was you or if it was like someone I don't remember where it was, but I remember someone was talking about it, and I just commented, and I'm just like, if all you can appreciate are are certain types of games and you can't appreciate these more artistic or just different, more creative attempts, like some of the app, honestly, if I were to create, and I haven't done this, but I really want to do it. But if I were to create, like, we do a lot of top 10 lists, but if I were to try to somehow pull off like a top 10 all time list,
Uh-huh.
I'd be willing to bet half of them are going to be indie titles because it's indie games, and we can kind of lead this into like what level of creative freedom, and because you're a sole developer and you have basically total control over what this game could do, and because it's an indie game, there's no corporate mandate of it has to be this, has to do that, has to do this. Like, how does being indie lean into that level of creativity?
Great question. It really is. It's both. It's such a weird double-edged sword because you have unlimited freedom, but at the same time, if you are like personally, if me, there's also this insane weight of like self like expectations and like self-criticism. So like it's like as the more freedom you get, the more pressure I put on myself to like meet my own expectations. So I have to be very vigilant in was it scope creep, where if I have an idea, it has to be really justifiably either warranted, it has to fit, has to be worthwhile, time this, because I only have so much manpower. I have to be very critical with my ideas, and I have to justify them. And it's something I learned in architecture school, where every move we would be asked if like, well, why did you put this wall here? And people are like, well, it's just because. We're like, no, no, every single move you do has to have a justification, a reason, and like ideally feed into something else and make like a holistic design. And I treat Lucid very much like a holistic design. All the mechanics and even like the world building and descriptions, they all feed into each other. I'm getting lost in the from the question. The creativity. Um, it is liberating to be my own boss, but it's also daunting to have to rein myself in because like I sometimes just become an idea machine and it won't stop and I have to know when to stop. So it's a gift and a curse. I'll say that.
I have one question left, and that's just kind of looking towards the future of the game. We talked a little bit about like the journey and just like what goes into the game and stuff. But one thing I'd love, we just love to learn about the future of Lucid a little bit.
Hmm.
What's the roadmap of the next year look like? Do we have? I know we have a Kickstarter coming up. Do we have a
Yes.
plan for like a release window, a beta period, an early access
Yes.
period? When can gamers expect to get their hands on the game?
So, very in the next what is it, today's in either the next week or so, I'm going to be releasing a kind of a trailer that is going to announce a Kickstarter at the end of this summer. So either late August, early September. Haven't pinned the exact date, but Kickstarter's coming late August, September. And then in there will be a lower tier of backing, which will gain access to essentially like early access, like alpha builds and betas and the demo. Basically, I'm working on a demo that's going to quote unquote launch alongside the Kickstarter, but it's just behind one of the lowest backer tiers, and then you can get access to the Discord, a special channel, and you very much like we were saying before, where the communities help build the games in tandem with the developer. That's where a lot of people that are really excited and want their voices heard. Well, that's where we can go, and we can have a very intimate development together to make Lucid as best as it can be in my eyes. But and then the release window, the Kickstarter is kind of going to help dictate that, depending on how successful or on cross fingers successful or unsuccessful it is. It'll dictate how much more content I can put in, all the dreams I have for it can be made. That'll, but broad strokes, by early 2025, like that's probably 2025. That's when I would expect something, but TBD.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. For those of you watching, by the time this video gets up, it'll probably be about like a weekish delayed or so. And by the time we get it up, you could look forward to hearing more about the Kickstarter. Definitely check this out. Let's see if we can blow that up and get this game fully funded out the gate of Kickstarter.
Yes,
and
please.
I know I'm really excited about the game. I can't wait to get my hands on it and check out that demo. For those of you watching, as the time of this recording, plan is also to have Lucid in our main event indie game showcase. So I'm really excited about that. Hopefully we'll be able to get that a new updated trailer in the showcase a little bit more Lucid as well, in addition to this interview. So I want to thank you, Eric, for joining us today, taking time out of your busy day to talk about Lucid. And for those of you watching, stay tuned here on YouTube. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications so you can be caught up on game trailers, indie developer news, interviews like this one, and of course our upcoming showcase. Thank you, and you guys have a wonderful day. We'll see you on the next Game Infinite video.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up, it's time to look at the enemy.